All right, more progress today on the circle track build. Man, we've been struggling a little bit. This clutch setup really kicked our butts. The long story short is we're using a used hydraulic throwout bearing, so the internal type that runs behind the clutch, and it didn't have any of the hardware, no instructions, had the wrong fittings on it, didn't have a bleeder, so I kind of had to come up with stuff I had here to try to make it work because it was over the weekend and no one was open that had anything. I was gonna run the traditional arm, and I'll actually show you guys. So traditionally, you run a throwout bearing like this with an arm, and let me see if I can actually find the other piece. I had it earlier. And you use an external hydraulic cylinder, essentially. And this actually is a pull type. So it pulls together, which pulls on this arm, which pushes on this bearing. So, is it a pull type? Yeah, it's a pull type because of how we had it mounted. That's what it is. But the problem is this throwout bearing's way too big up here at the front for the clutch we're running. It needs to be a lot smaller diameter and have, instead of being flat, it needs to be rounded out on the edge. So we didn't have the right throwout bearing to make this setup work, but the hydraulic bearing we had is the right throwout bearing. It has the rounded edge for our clutch. So we kind of had no choice but to use it. And let me recap one more thing before I show you guys a little bit more with that. So we did finally get the clutch figured out. We had the transmission in and out at least 20 times, no exaggeration. Kept moving the mid plates around from in between the transmission to behind to try to come up with the right clearance. It was a nightmare. At least 8 hours of messing with that before we finally got it. And it's not 100% perfect, but I'd say it's 90%. I have good gear engagement. I have 70 thousandths of clearance when we're off the pedal. They want around 100 to 120, but I can tell you that won't work for us because the one problem or complaint I have is with 70 thousandths clearance, when I compress the clutch, my release is low. And if I was to add more clearance, it would make the release even lower. So it's not an option. If anything, I need to set it with about 40 thousandths clearance. That way it raises my release point. But that's okay. I was able to adjust it with the adjustment inside the car. And let me grab. Basically, I'm going to show you guys everything I can on the ground here. And then I'll go underneath the car and explain it. If I can plug in my light. Give me 1 second. So I was able to adjust it inside the car, basically at the clevis for the clutch master cylinder. There's a lock nut back here, and then that's basically a threaded rod, so you can adjust that clevis outward, which pushes our pedal out. This actually worked perfect because now it's even with our brake pedal. It was below the brake pedal, and I didn't really care for that. The other big thing we got accomplished is the shifter in the car. So it is a traditional shifter, H pattern. Like I said, this is that 68 Camaro 3-speed shifter. We're able to adapt it and make it work. So that's reverse, that's first, second, third. So it works out perfect. The boot works. It's a little bit tall, and I did cut it down, but I left it tall for a reason. Is the taller you leave it, the more leverage it gives you. Just kind of makes it easier to shift, and if it kind of glitches or hangs up, gives you a little bit more feel for it, for you can kind of get it in gear. So I like where it's at for now. I may trim it down later, but that was also a really big project, is to get that shifter in. So clutch is working, shifter's in, super happy with that. Now I'm gonna go ahead and raise it up and explain a little bit more about this clutch setup. But we are getting there. I also got, I can't remember if I showed you guys in the other video, but I'll show you guys now if I didn't. But I got the fuel system completely done. I ran a 10AN line from the front to the rear. That way, if we ever want to switch to E85, I have plenty of basically line in diameter, so volume. It's definitely kicked our butts a bit, but it's also definitely making a lot of progress. Like each one of these steps is a big thing checked off the list. Just got to keep checking things off the list. I'd like to have this thing out here really soon. I'm going to work on it more tomorrow. So also got the transmission full of fluid, this gear oil, and here is our, let me grab this light. So here is our 10AN fuel line. I've got that ran really nice and out of the way of everything. The closest point is to the exhaust, but the exhaust is actually about 4 inches higher than what it is right now. So that's gonna be my next step, is getting the exhaust done. But we've got it ran up, kind of up and around, down and back, and I've got a 100 micron stainless steel filter back there. Also got the drive shaft in. Action Machine got that done for us. Huge shout out to them for getting it done so quickly. So drive shaft is in. You can kind of see the shifter setup up there. Like I said, it's just a 3-speed Saginaw shifter from a 68 Camaro. We adapted it, made this bracket and plate for it. Modified our linkage and rods, just cut those and re-welded them, but all that worked out perfect. Now with this clutch setup, this is that hydraulic bearing I'm talking about, and that red on there is actually just Loctite. But what you have to do is you run shims right where you see those. You'll see a nut and a bolt. Then on the other side you see a threaded rod with washers and a nut. Then on the top side there's 2 more bolts with nuts. So you have to shim that out about 200 thousandths from factory. Otherwise it hits the back of the piston. So we weren't aware of that, and there's no real information we could find on that. So that took a lot to figure that out. Once you have that figured out, then you set your actual clearance to your piston to your clutch. So just took a lot to get that sorted out. But they do work really well once you do have the right depth set. But just the really bad design of these is, let me get this out of the way, is basically every time you've got to make a clutch adjustment, there isn't one. You're going to have to pull the transmission out and add or take away shims. That's just horrible by design, if you ask me. They say, like I said, set it up with like 100,000 clearance, you're always good. It's not the case. This is the second one of these I've messed with, and neither time did 100 thousandths work. And you are going to have some adjustment when they wear. So I don't like them. I'm sure they make much better designs now. In fact, I know they do. Maybe sometime I might try one of those, but after dealing with this one, I don't think I'm going to use another one anytime soon. I like this old school traditional type because you can just make your adjustment right here with the jam nuts. You don't have to worry about pulling the transmission out for adjustment. So this style is simpler in that you don't have that linkage arm that comes out, and you don't have to locate that external cylinder, but the external cylinder just kicks this other one's butt when it comes to adjustment. And the other point that I've always said is this external cylinder is out of the bell housing and not in the heat near the clutch. That is a really good thing. This style is right in the heat. It's in the bell housing. It's gonna get hotter. So you risk kind of boiling the fluid, or over time that seal could fail. So I ultimately really don't like the style that we're using, but it's what we had, and it's gonna work for now. So that's my little bit of a rant on the hydraulic throwout bearings. Someone's got to make a better one by now, but if you have that old school style like what we have, do yourself a favor and get something else. But think that'll be it for tonight. I just want to give you guys an update. Radiator's in. I think I showed you guys that last time. Power steering works, clutch works, shifter works, brakes work, fuel system is done. It's just a bunch of little things. I got to do the throttle linkage, get a windshield for it. It's going to be time to scale the car pretty soon. So yeah, we're making a lot of progress. Just figured I'd fill you guys in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you guys have any questions, let me know. I'm doing all these videos a little bit in a hurry because we are in a time crunch to get this thing done. So I can always go back and give you guys any of the information you need, and we'll have plenty of more content on this car. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep it saucy.